Forgetting? Record. Amazing. I remembered. Um, so, I am so excited this morning to introduce Adrienne, Lake, and Anthony from NCCJ, the National Conference for Community and Justice of the Greater Dayton. So I am going to turn it over to the three of you and enjoy the morning, y'all.
All right, thanks, Sherry. We appreciate it, and we are so thankful for the opportunity to be here speaking with you all today. So we're going to jump right in. We are going to start this morning with a little bit of Zoom etiquette, everyone's favorite thing nowadays. We want to start by asking that we keep ourselves muted. There may be opportunities that we ask for a volunteer to read something, or if you have a question, we may ask for you to unmute yourself and ask that question. But just to make it easier for everyone to hear, in the background, we ask that you keep yourself muted. Take breaks as you need throughout this training. There's a few things that we are going to be doing. We're going to be posting questions to get feedback at different times throughout the training session. So you're going to see two symbols. In fact, you're going to see one in the top right now, which is going to be the symbol that we're going to be asking a polling question here in a moment. The other symbol that you will see is going to be two comment blocks, which will indicate that we have a discussion question on that slide. So you can look for those. So we're going to do a quick practice question here, our question one, which is going to try to figure out who's in the room, a look at our position. So we are going to be launching that poll now. You should see it pop up on your screen. So you should see owner, CEO, management, admin, HR, and direct staff. So we just ask if you can go through and vote on that question. Oh. And then Sherry, whenever you think that we have a good percentage in, if you want to present the results.
I'm being cute. How do I present them?
There should be a stop polling button.
You know what? I have that on my screen.
I have the end polling. Are you ready?
Yep, go ahead.
Share results. There you go. Huh. Learn something new every day, y'all.
So you should have those results up on your screen. So we have 7 individuals who are the owner, CEO of their organization, about 30%, 11 individuals who are management level, about 48, so nearly half of our participants. 1 of our individuals is an admin or HR. 3% are direct staff, 13%, or 3 individuals at 13%, and we have 1 individual who is an other position. All right, thank you. Sherry, are you able to stop sharing the results?
Yep.
Perfect. So I also want to mention that we will be monitoring the comments if you have any questions. We have Anthony Pettiford, who is serving as what I like to consider our executive producer, who is in the background answering any questions that you may have. So feel free to post your questions in the chat box. He will either respond to them in the chat box or he will unmute himself and ask myself or Adrienne. We also want to quickly mention this is not the normal format that we do trainings. We are generally in person. For obvious reasons, we are not able to do in-person things right now, but our trainings, the structure of them is very heavy on communication, very heavy on discussion. So we do ask while we're going through this training that we are able to participate in as much discussion as possible. So we'll be purposely engaging our chat feature, and we invite you as well to just post things in the chat as we're going through, whether that be comments, questions, suggestions, but utilize that chat feature, as that's something that really allows us to best shape this training. So a quick introduction. My name is Lake Miller. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm a prevention manager with NCCJ. I've been with the organization for about 3 years now. So I'm very excited to be joining everyone today.
Hi, everyone. I am Adrienne Miller with NCCJ of Greater Dayton. I am here as a trainer for today, but also I'm the executive director of NCCJ. I started here December 2nd in that position. So it's new for me, and during the little bit of time that I've been here, it has been a wild roller coaster ride. You know, I thought in March, when we had to suddenly adjust to working remotely, that that would be, you know, the biggest challenge. And then things took another turn with the Black Lives Matter movement, and that has really not changed our focus, but it pushed us in a direction we were already going in, but kind of had to go even further into it. So it's been an exciting time. So I am a social worker. I had 12 years as a school-based therapist working in different schools around the area. And I had previously been at NCCJ about 4 years ago as the director of education. So like Lake said, working and doing these conversations where I'm talking to a screen is very different. I love having that interaction with people. So please put comments in there. I have 3 screens up right now, and one of them does have chats on it. So I'd love to hear from people, see how things are going. So that's a little bit about me. So what I want to do is just talk a little bit about NCCJ. So a lot of people aren't really familiar with NCCJ. Hopefully some of you might be, but NCCJ has been in Dayton since 1978. The National Conference for Community and Justice actually started in 1927 and was initially the National Conference for Christians and Jews, and it was created to address religious issues going on in our country. In the 80s, they changed it from Christians and Jews to Community and Justice because the work was much more encompassing. And then unfortunately in 2003, the national organization dissolved, so there is no longer a national. But we have been here since 1978. We have been partners in the community with many different organizations for quite a long time. We are a small social justice organization. The 3 names that Sherry mentioned are our 3 full-time staff. And to be honest, we just doubled as of July 1st from 1.5 people to 3. So this is an exciting time for us. NCCJ's mission is to build a community dedicated to eliminating bias, bigotry, and all forms of discrimination. And one of the ways that we do that is through these trainings. So we have 3 different areas. We do professional development and trainings, like today. We go into organizations, we do other training. We get involved in community advocacy and action, both within with adults and youth. We are partners with a lot of different organizations on different projects. And then we also have leadership development that we do. Just a real quick on the youth, we run 2 summer programs, Anytown Youth Leadership Institute for high schoolers and a Police and Youth Together program, where we're building positive relationships between youth and officers. And then throughout the school year, we go into schools and we do training with kids to work on leadership skills and communication and help build that community within schools, have those conversations that people don't normally get to have. So we do a lot of that both at work and in the schools.
So we're going to briefly go over our session objectives. So our objectives for today are to identify ways to create a more inclusive and equitable work environment, develop skills for constructive conversations regarding sensitive issues, and to review the importance of self-care. We think those are all especially important at this current moment in our social climate. We chose this quote because it really stands out in this moment. Be bold, and everywhere be bold. This is a time where the actions that we take are more important than ever. The actions we take around inclusion and diversity need to be bold. They need to be brave. And the things that we do as businesses and organizations, people are watching that right now and making their decisions based on the decisions that we make as organizations. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the things that we can do as individuals, the things that our organizations can do to be bold, to make a difference in this time. So we always start our trainings with a personal agreement. This is an agreement that we hold with ourselves, and we're going to try something. We're going to try to identify a participant who would be willing to volunteer to read this personal agreement. Now, the way we are going to do that is you should all have a raise your hand feature, or actually a thumbs up or a clapping, any of those hand notions. If you're on an iPad, it's in your top right corner under the More button. So at this point, if we have somebody who would be willing, I see Shauna Collins raised their hand. So Shauna, I'm going to ask if you can unmute yourself, and I'm going to pull up this next screen, and I'm going to ask if you can read this to everyone, please.
I understand that it is okay to be imperfect with regard to my understanding of people who are different from me. I have permission to reveal a lack of experience and understanding. I have permission to struggle with these issues and to be open and honest about my feelings. I am a product of my culture, upbringing, environment, biology, and experiences, and I am a complex individual. I do not have to feel guilty about what I believe, but I do take responsibility for accepting as much new information and knowledge as I can, challenging myself to examine my assumptions and beliefs, granting permission to other members of the group to struggle with these issues and to be open and honest about their feelings, and agreeing to respect the confidentiality of all the personal information shared in the group.
Wonderful. Thank you, Shauna, for volunteering and for reading. So at this point, we want to take a quick moment for discussion. Okay, there's a lot of information that we're unpacking here. So I want to take a quick moment to pose the question in our chat feature here of what resonates with you as we read through this personal statement. Maybe it's a phrase, maybe it's one of the ideas that comes out of this. But we just want to take a moment to post in this chat feature something that resonates with you from this personal agreement. And to Rita's question regarding the PDF at the end, we can certainly send these materials out. So again, if we can take a quick moment to post any reflection that you have in the chat feature about this personal agreement. Janet commented progress over perfection. Shauna resonated with the statement, I am a complex individual and do my best to accept as much new information as I can. We have it's okay to not always have the answer or to be perfect. Keep the comments coming. This is what we like, the discussion and the hearing from you, what resonates. Oh. Okay, so we are the product of our experiences, absolutely. To struggle with these issues and to be open and honest, great, thank you. Thank you to everyone who has been posting in the comment feature. We greatly appreciate that. The agreement to respect, grant permission to others to struggle, being open to change and understanding our own biases, permission to reveal a lack of experience and understanding, great. So for me, what I take away from this conversation is the I am who I am. That's the moment that resonates with me the most, right? We all came to this point on a different path. None of us came here the same way. We had different upbringings. We went to different schools. We saw different things, and all of those things that we heard prior, that we were taught, that we witnessed, those are what shape our beliefs, our feelings, our biases, right? So we all have these different components of our lives. And to me, this statement gives me permission to have those things, to know those things that I was taught, but says that I do need to learn new information. I do need to be willing to hear other perspectives and struggle as I'm hearing those things, as I'm learning new information. As Sally said, keep an open mind. I think that's a great way to put it. as we're going through this training, we also want to remember an important communication rule. And I think this is an important rule to remember as we go through our life as well. And that rule is intent does not always equal impact, okay? So intent does not always equal impact. Means that if somebody says something or does something, what they want the message to be is not always how you perceive that message, okay? An example of this would be if I told you a joke that I found to be really quite funny, and the impact that you had was that that was hurtful, right? So my intent was to say a joke, and your impact from that joke was, that's not funny, that's hurtful, okay? Again, this ties back to, we all have these different upbringings, we have these different experiences that have taught us these things. And I like to go about this thinking it's an educational opportunity, right? To say, this is not okay. And we'll talk about what some of those short-term responses are towards the end of the training. But remember as we're going through this training, as we're seeing things in chats, and beyond this training as we're talking to individuals.
Hello again, everyone. It's Adrienne. I really appreciate all the dialogue that's been taking place already. I think this is a great start, and it's what we'd like to see when we're going along. So thank you for all. So today's an opportunity to build the tomorrow you want. You know, we all know what we know, just like the personal agreement said, but we need to keep growing and learning more because our world keeps evolving, especially right now. It's really evolved a lot. You know, for me, as I'm preparing for this training today, I'm one of those, I like to dialogue, I like to connect with people, and doing scripted things I'm not so good at. I have trouble following scripts. We're usually really interactive, but we're adjusting to this new normal. So there's going to probably be a little more questioning going on that we might know, you know, than what we had typically done. The feedback you're doing is great. You know, we're all kind of learning to adjust to everything that's going on in our new world. But when I think about new world, I also think about what an exciting time it is, because this is the time in life. These are the things that are happening now are going to end up in history books that our great-grandchildren or grandchildren are going to be reading about. They're going to read about a pandemic that hit the entire world, but they're also going to read about how communities addressed issues of systemic racism and all the different layers that encompasses. You know, when I look at this presentation, had we done this 6 months ago, it would have probably been different than it is today. Right now, we need to look at things in a different lens. We need to look through the lens of inclusivity. We need to use that lens in everything in more places than we ever imagined. And then we also need to really think about the choices that we're making and be bold in doing them. You know, like that quote Lake shared just a moment ago, you know, be bold, be bold, be bold. We need to do that. Now's that opportunity. So I think as leaders, you know, we need to figure out the best way to do that. And a lot of it's going to be asking questions and educating ourselves. And we're really glad that you're here with us to do some of that. I saw something on Facebook last night. I probably spent too much time on it. That said, start with integrity, lead with integrity, end with integrity. Anything else gets messy. And that's kind of in line with this. You know, if it feels right to you, ask that. If it doesn't feel right, then speak up about it. All right, next slide. Okay, all right, so we're going to jump into the 6 traits of an inclusive leader. And this comes from an article from Deloitte that they use with their employees. There's a lot of great information on their website about the different things that they do to work on inclusion. So this comes from 6 traits of an inclusive leader. So the traits that we're going to get into each of them are commitment, courage, cognizance of bias, curiosity, culturally intelligent, and collaborative. So, you know, their research said that when people feel they're treated fairly, that their uniqueness is appreciated and they have a sense of belonging, that they have a voice in decision making, that they feel included. So that's something we want to make sure to do. We want to be treating people fairly and groups fairly based on their unique characteristics rather than on stereotypes. I'm going to go back to what Sally said, keep that open mind. We want to be personalizing things to individuals, understanding and valuing the uniqueness of diversity that people come from, that are members of our groups, and we want to leverage the thinking of these diverse groups. That's how we're going to be able to be smarter and make better decisions and reduce the risk of being blindsided by different things as well. Next slide. Let's see, Sally made a comment. I like that you mentioned reception of the topic. And maybe it was supposed to be perception of the topic would be received differently. 6 months ago, I rented a movie about school integration, the best of enemies, prior to the pandemic, and didn't watch past the beginning. Since I couldn't return it, we finally watched it through last week and found it very impactful. You're right, Sally, there are a lot of great movies out there, and it also is a time to really educate ourselves. The books and the movies a few weeks ago that were #1 were all books that related to Black Lives Matter and communication, being anti-racist. We're going to get into some of this at the end. But that is definitely something I would do, is encourage people to go and read and watch these different things. Thank you for mentioning that. So commitment. I'm on the wrong page, sorry. Okay, so highly inclusive leaders are committed to diversity and inclusion because these objectives align with their personal values and because they believe in the business case. So part of this is that we have to believe it, we have to feel it, we have to really understand the importance of diversity and inclusion and what that can do as a leader, how it can help enhance our organization and productivity and everything we're doing. But it can be a big challenge because it takes a lot of time and energy. I don't know, is there anyone in here that has extra time or extra energy? I can't see anybody's faces, but I'm assuming you're saying no. Time and energy is something we don't have a lot of, but it's really important to invest that time in this. Prioritizing it to address the issues of inclusion will help in the long run with your organization. Clearly understanding the commercial imperative is critical, as we talked about. It's hard to argue with diversity being important. In order for a business to change, we need to be able to have these conversations and talk about things. When leaders prioritize this and address inclusion, it kind of shows this verbal commitment. It helps people understand that they're being seen, that they're being heard. And that just kind of shows that commitment. Next slide. Courage. Highly inclusive leaders speak up and challenge the status quo. They are humble about their strengths and their weaknesses. So it's not easy to be that person that has to speak up. We have to address something when somebody says something. I know I had a coworker years ago who talked about how somebody was sending these emails out to everyone, tons of emails, and they were like sometimes really inappropriate. And finally she responded and said, hey, that's really offensive to me. And then other people spoke up. So somebody has to be that first person, and it takes courage to do that, to be the first person to speak up, because other people may be feeling uncomfortable as well. Sometimes what we need to do with courage is to challenge people to look at things in a different way. Challenge the way that we look at things, that we do things. As leaders, we kind of go into organizations. I know my last job, I went into it, and when I would question stuff, I was frequently told, well, this is the way we've always done it. And a lot of places, they've been doing things the same way for a long time, and maybe it worked for a while, but maybe now it's time to really reevaluate that. And it takes courage to say, hey, maybe we could do this differently. So it's really, like I said, that lens of inclusivity, looking at it, looking at the way we hire people, looking at the way that we are recruiting for people, the interns we bring, the relationships that we build within the community, and really going outside of what might be our typical comfort zones. And it takes courage to do that. Inclusive leaders have to speak up out about themselves. And sometimes that means revealing personal things, sharing personal stories about yourself. Sometimes it means admitting that we've made mistakes. I know I've made mistakes. You know, I'm a trained therapist. I'm supposed to be really good at like understanding and reading people and helping people. And there have been times after, you know, that I've looked back years later and thought, oh my gosh, I could have done it differently, but I didn't know what I didn't know, like we talked about in the personal agreement. So when we go and we learn more and we gather more information, then we're better prepared to make those decisions. So it's important to be brave and to have humility and understand that we don't know everything, which is why we need to just keep asking for help and to educate ourselves. Cognizance of bias. So highly inclusive leaders are mindful of personal and organizational blind spots and self-regulate to ensure fair play. This isn't always easy, especially if things have been done the same way. You know, we need to look at things and make sure, you know, when we look at our board of directors, is there diversity there? And what does that diversity represent? I think a lot of times when we talk about diversity, it ends up being race. And that is a huge part of diversity, but diversity means much more than that. Do I have anyone out there that can tell me a little bit about what diversity, what other forms of diversity there are? Can anyone put that in the chat box? Besides race, what other forms of diversity is there? Religion. Thank you. Sexual preference. Gender and sexuality. Sex and religion. Disabilities. Political, age. Functional needs. Education. That's great. You guys got a lot of really good ones. I think the only one maybe I didn't see maybe would be class, alternative relationship types, age. Yeah. So when we think about diversity, we have to think about all of these things. We have to think when we're looking at our board or when we're looking at our coworkers or team members, are we have different ages represented, different genders, different race? Do we have people with disabilities? Do we even have an office that people with disabilities could come into? Our office, I'm very sad to say, has this ridiculous door. So a person in a wheelchair could not enter it without assistance because it's a really heavy old glass door. We're in an old building and it's one of the original doors. But thinking about that, can someone with a disability get into where you are? Are they able to work in your environment? Could also be an invisible disability. But we need to make sure that we have people, all sorts of people represented, different religions, people with different educations. You know, I was reading an article the other day and it was about an organization that started recruiting. They had always recruited, I think it was MBAs. And then they said, you know, they created another program so they could recruit other people and get them into this. So they created like a whole new certification program. And they were hiring people that they wouldn't normally have had the opportunity to reach out to. So being aware of our own biases, though, that's real important because we need to make sure that we have everyone at the table. We need to make sure that it's equal and fair for everyone to be there. So I know I'm going really fast, or at least it feels that way to me. Any questions or any comments that anybody has at this point? All right. So subtle biases can negatively impact the way we see others and the decisions we make. Sometimes they're things we don't even realize, they're so subtle. So some of those things include implicit biases, you know, which are things that occur when we judge people according to our unconscious stereotypes. Like we all have these implicit biases and we need to be aware of it. I know there's things like I have a thought that jumps into my head and I'm like, wow, where did that even come from? And I have to sit there and I have to analyze it and kind of think to myself, wow, you know, I don't know why I felt that way, why I did what I just did or said, you know, thought what I thought in my head. So, you know, we have to constantly be looking at our implicit biases. We need to look at the people that we're hanging out with. It's really easy to surround yourself by people that look like you, that that maybe pray like you, that live similarly to you. It's really kind of comfortable. You know, we need to think about the people that we're working with and making sure that we're not playing favoritism with them in the different groups. Next slide. We need to make sure that when we're praising people, that we're praising the right people, that we're not playing favoritism of anyone, that we're including everyone in the group. We need to be, we need to confront our own biases, which isn't always easy. Or sometimes it's even confronting the biases of others and having to speak to people, probably in a private place, not probably, but in a private place, and have those conversations. Hey, I've noticed the way that you've been reacting or the things that you've been saying. It's not easy. And we need to help people with that sometimes. In my last job I had, we had a person, and she felt that she was being discriminated against for the color of her skin, and brought it up. And what they ended up doing was eventually bringing in some trainers to work with us as a team to kind of look at our unconscious biases. And that was their way of addressing the issue. You know, so the employer realized, oh, maybe there is something going on and we should do something. They invested time and they invested resources in bringing in a trainer to help us address those issues. So I think for that employee, it helped them feel heard. And we need to make sure, let's see, we just got a message from Shauna. Handicap parking when individuals look fine is an implicit bias. I had and now would qualify for a permit if I asked for it. So I totally get it. Yep. So that's true. And Shauna, I got to be honest, I look at people and I used to question things more in my head, but you see somebody that comes out of a car that isn't limping, isn't getting into a wheelchair, or using a cane or something, and there's this assumption that they're manipulating the system. But as Shauna pointed out, there's a lot of times people have different disabilities and they need that. You know, they could get very tired walking there. There's a lot of different reasons that somebody needs that spot, and it's not for us to decide that. But you're right, our implicit biases could get in the way. So we need to work on harmony, which isn't always easy. So we, let's see. We need to think about equity versus equality a lot of times when we're thinking about the different groups. So who knows, who can tell me what equity means? Anyone out there able to give a brief definition of what equity means? So Linda said good for everyone. Being fair and impartial, values. All right. More about assets or benefits shared. Okay. So when I think about equity, I think about those things, but I also think about it's not just, you know, equality, everybody gets the same thing. Equity, people get what they need. So somebody may need more than someone else needs. Somebody might just need a little bit. You know, the typical image, and we probably should have put it in here, is that you have 3 people at a fence looking at a baseball game. There's a fence. So if everybody each got one thing to step on, the tall person would be able to see, but the other 2 might not, you know? So we have to give people what they need to be able to do what they want. We need to give people what they need to help them to excel. And that's going to look very different for people. So it might be about some person maybe needs specific trainings. Or maybe that person needs a little bit of extra time, a little extra mentoring along the way. You know, but you might have someone else, you know, you might have one person you need to meet with weekly. You might have another person in the same job that you need to meet with monthly. And that's okay either way, you know, because you're giving them what they need. You're giving them that equity. So please let me know along the way if you have any questions. Curiosity is another important one for being an inclusive leader. You know, we need to ask questions. We need to research. We need to learn, and we need to think about different things. We need to think of things in different ways. And sometimes that means asking people their perspective. I mean, a lot of times we should always be getting input from people. So inclusive leaders have an open mindset, a desire to understand how others view and experience the world, and a tolerance for ambiguity. I find that a funny word to say. So, you know, once again, like I said, it's talking with different people. There was an interview with the chairman and CEO of Dell from 2015, and he said, because with curiosity comes learning and new ideas. And in businesses that are changing very rapidly, if you're not curious, you're not learning. And you are going to have a real problem. So we have to keep learning. We have to keep growing. And this is a time, I think, of great opportunity for growth and great opportunity for learning. And people are receptive right now to conversations that maybe they were having a hard time talking about before. I've talked to several friends that I have that are people of color, and they talk about, you know, I'm having really difficult conversations 30 times a day with people that I've never had. And I will keep doing it because it's helping people, but it's also exhausting. But do that. Open up, talk to people, ask questions. As a leader, we need to do that. Be open to different ideas and experience things. So when I think about different perspectives, when I first worked here at NCCJ, I was brought in, I was the director of education. And I had been a school-based therapist for 12 years before that. I didn't have experience in diversity and inclusion. And then in the beginning, I'm like, I don't know why they hired me. It was really kind of nerve-wracking. You know, I would go to different meetings and I'd be told, oh, that person applied for your job. Oh, that person. I'm like, but that person's really smart. I don't understand why you brought me. So as time went on, what I realized is the executive director at that time was Mary Tyler. I don't know if some of you guys might know her, an amazing woman. But I think one of the reasons she brought me in, actually not I think, I know because we did discuss it, is that I brought in different strengths than she had. We were both very, very different people. There's a leadership activity, the leadership compass, that deals with directions. Mary was a north and I'm a south. Completely opposite personalities, completely opposite ways of dealing with things. You know, she's very concrete. I'm a dreamer. But we worked together and we created great things because we could complement each other. And what I found really amazing is as time went on, each of us kind of picked up some positive traits from the other personality and started doing things in a different way. You know, so it's important to be curious, to bring in those different perspectives, to have people that are going to challenge you, not always hire that person that's going to be like, yes, yes, yes. Have that person that's going to say, wait, I'm not sure about that. Or what about doing things a different way? We really need those different perspectives for things. So I did eventually realize why I was brought in. She saw something in me that maybe I hadn't seen right away. And I'm so thankful that she did, because coming here and working for NCCJ has been one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. I love this organization, the mission that it has, the people we get to meet, the services we provide. We are needed. We're an organization that is here and has a purpose. So I'm so thankful that she saw that and that I came here. But you could do that for someone else too. I had a job I thought that I loved until I came to NCCJ and learned what true love really was. So looking at people that maybe you wouldn't have looked at. So when we talk about an organization, what can oh, I missed a page. Sorry, I missed 2 pages. All right, cultural intelligence. Highly inclusive leaders are competent and effective in cross-cultural communication. Now, were they born that way? Probably not. They had to grow and they had to learn. They had to have the drive to do it, the passion to gain that knowledge, and the willingness to be adaptable in what they were doing. You know, they had to take an active learning and seek out opportunities in what they were working on. You know, it's not something that we're born with, just like we talked about. We're born being taught certain things. We're raised in homes and taught certain, whatever we're taught. Maybe it's something that's been passed down from generations to generations. But we need to go outside of that and to grow. And so to be a highly inclusive leader, you really need to go outside of our comfort zones. You know, we need to challenge ourselves and get into things in a deeper level and have that thirst for learning. That thirst will help you to motivate and deepen cultural understanding, and also to help your team to be stronger and more knowledgeable and better at working together. We need to be able to build strong connections with people. And part of that is understanding who they are, whether it's understanding about religions. I'm Jewish, and I know that I've had people, you know, our major holidays in the Jewish religion are Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. People always think that it's Hanukkah because it's around Christmas time. Oh, this is your big holiday, you know, and really it's not. Our major holidays are these, you know, we spend the days in temple. One of them we fast for the day, but those are the big days for us. You know, and I remember one year I had a supervisor who would give me a card every year. Rosh Hashanah is our new year, and she would give me a card, and it meant so much to me that she acknowledged that. You know, taking the time to acknowledge individuals, to celebrate things about them is important once you get to know them and understand. So building that cultural intelligence, that deeper level of a relationship, it can be challenging, it can be scary, because like we said, we have to be vulnerable, but it can really help an organization, it can help a team to thrive. Next slide. Collaboration. So I think I'm going to just start off. We have another polling question here. So I'm going to start off with a poll. Let's see, Lake, am I asking this question right? It says, what is your best inclusive leadership trait?
What leadership trait do you think you best exhibit?
Oh, now I see the
And
question.
it should be up on your screen.
Okay, thank you. So if you want to put that down, which trait best exemplifies you? It could be hard to come down to just one.
And Sherry, whenever you think we have a good percentage of the 35, feel free to close that out.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Sherry. So this is interesting, actually. Collaboration was something people feel really, about 50% of the people, 12 people that responded, felt really good about collaboration. Commitment was another one, taking that commitment to being a leader, being curious about finding things, being aware of our biases a little bit less, being culturally intelligent a little less, and courage. Courage being the challenging one. You know, the great thing about courage right now is that you're not alone in doing any of this. Right now, people are taking stands that never took a stand before. You know, Ben and Jerry's, no one is brave, is what Sally said. Maybe they didn't put it down because they picked two and they picked the other one. I suppose that's the possibility. It's good to have some humor, Sally. Thank you. I think we do have lots of brave people. But this is the time. So Ben and Jerry's put out a statement. People, organizations are putting out statements in support of Black Lives Matter, or speaking up about topics. I mean, even with the pandemic going on, coming together and looking at things in different ways, evaluating how we could work remotely. I mean, so many jobs we had to go to an office, you know. Now a lot of people, their office, like for me, my office has been my dining room table. So had I been home, a cat would have walked by the screen multiple times by now. So that's why I came to the office. But it is hard to be courageous. But I do want to say, like, that this is the time. This is the time to be bold and to be courageous. And there are people around to help and support you. We at NCCJ, we're always here to help and support. So anyone have any
Sherry,
questions?
are you able to take the poll questions down? Thank you.
I still see it. Okay. Did anyone have any questions or comments about the poll? Okay. Well, it's funny because I think I was supposed to ask the poll after I talked about collaboration, and collaboration was the one that got the most. So feel free to give me some comments when we're talking about collaboration here. So, you know, collaboration. What's collaboration about? How does collaboration look in your office? What is the main purpose of making a statement? Are you talking about, Carolyn, how Black Lives Matter that I talked about with Ben and Jerry's? Anything. Okay. So I think the purpose of making a statement is it shows your employees, it shows your customers that you're standing up for something. So if you have, so last month was LGBTQ, like what's the title of the month? Gay Pride Month?
Pride Month.
Pride Month. Last month was Pride Month. So some organizations would make comments supporting their LGBTQ employees or customers. So it helps people to feel included, knowing that they're being seen or heard. I think making the message about what's going on in the world right now with the Black Lives Matter movement shows your employees, your people of color. Hold on, sorry. Doesn't
And
it seem—
I think actually, Carolyn and Julie, I'm very grateful that we brought up this point, and you guys have actually jumped ahead about 20 slides. So that's awesome, and I appreciate the discussion. And we will have a lengthy discussion. I have it, I think, on about slide 38 about this topic and about the topic of making a statement. And Julie, I think the point that you're getting to is the point of making a statement versus making a statement that is actually backed up by action. So, and we'll talk about that later on in the training as we talk about what organizations and individuals can do.
Thank you, Lake. Somebody made a comment that it's worth noting that 50% of attendees are in management positions and 50% say that collaboration is their strongest leadership trait. And that is great. That is absolutely true. It is wonderful to see that because we do want management collaborating with everybody. Right. And then there's another comment about the statement, which we'll address later. So, you know, collaboration is a super important part of a team. It does help people feel heard. It helps bring people together. I think it increases productivity as well. And people feel engaged in where they are when they're collaborating and having those conversations.
So if we can take a brief moment here, if it's okay, Adrienne, we've just gone through this poll, and I think, you know, there's some interesting points about, okay, so 50% of us chose collaboration. None of us chose courage, right? Which is perhaps one of the harder points to work at, might be the courage point. So I want to take a brief moment, and if individuals can post in the discussion box, why did you choose that leadership trait, one of those 6 leadership traits? Why did you choose that for being your strongest trait? So again, we're going to post in the chat box here why you chose the strongest leadership trait that you exhibit. Okay, so Teresa enjoys asking people questions and hearing their perspective. So that's why she chose curiosity. I definitely understand that curiosity perspective. I am a person who's very interested in knowing the why. Holly says, I fall to collaboration with others to solve issues and accomplish projects, which is absolutely correct. And I think that's a great answer. You know, we've talked about in the presentation, and we'll continue to talk about the importance of hearing other perspectives and how additional perspectives can bring great strength to a project. I want all voices to contribute, as my ideas are often tweaked or altered based on others, right? That, again, that idea of collaboration. Due to the nature of my business, without collaboration, we wouldn't be able to get anything accomplished. Amanda, I'd be interested in hearing more about that. Rita says that I'm committed to focusing on this for my organization going forward and growing my courage. Sally is in business development. She's our only other. Chose collaboration because I see value in different individuals to create teams and efforts. Linda chose curiosity. I feel there is always so much to learn from others. I love to listen and digest other views. Again, we're talking about getting other people's perspectives. So I appreciate everyone posting in there. I think that gives us a good view as to why we posted things. And I love these conversations around, you know, bringing all of these different perspectives together. We build something that's much stronger than just myself. I have a great, my experience in NCCJ, a lot of what I do is camps for youth. Adrian mentioned one of the camps that we run earlier at the beginning of the training. And I have ways that I like to do things. I have ways that I've done things in the past, but by bringing in diverse perspectives, I get to think about things that maybe I haven't considered, or maybe I've been doing something and somebody with a diverse perspective is able to come in and say, hey, here's an easier way that we can do what you've been doing, or here's a way that's similar, but that may have a greater impact to our participants. So by bringing in those diverse perspectives, we're certainly able to strengthen our programs or services that we offer to the communities.
All right, and then there were just two more comments. I think somebody talked about committed because they tend to work in an environment that is mission driven and they use that as their North Star for advancing their work, which I think is absolutely true. Your mission should always guide what you do. Then someone else said, to me, commitment, they keep going. Commitment entails so many of the qualities, which is maybe why it was hard to just pick one. To be committed gives you the courage and collaboration to get all the perspectives. I've been curious about other people's lives, and so learning about other cultures has helped me understand their viewpoints. And then the last comment was collaboration. It's the trait that comes most naturally to me. Although in order to truly collaborate, you have to be cognitive of the other 5 traits, which is absolutely true. And I think kind of some of what I'm hearing in the other comments too. You know, you have to feel comfortable to have those conversations. Maybe collaboration really encompasses a lot of what the other traits we're talking about. So that's great. I appreciate the discussion on that. So what we're going to talk about now is just what your organization can do. So developing inclusive leadership capabilities and building a structure of inclusion, we need to start from the beginning. We need to look at where we're recruiting. Where are we going? What colleges, universities are we looking at? Are we rewarding and recognizing our employees that are doing good things, that are thinking outside of the box, that are adapting to this wild world that we're living in right now, going above and beyond? Providing opportunities for leadership development and providing those opportunities, not just to certain people, but to all people. You know, looking around at different levels within our organizations and seeing people that have these skills and helping to promote them, helping them to see those things in them that maybe they hadn't seen, or helping to encourage an idea that they brought up. Reviewing your vendor list, looking at who you're getting all your supplies from. You know, in Dayton, the chamber has a list of all minority-owned businesses. Looking at that, making sure that you have contracts with organizations that are run by minorities. That's because I think if your employees see that you are working with other organizations, then it helps them feel even more included. And supporting volunteers and supporting your employees to volunteer in other places, encouraging them to have time to go out and pursue those interests. We're going to talk about self-care at the end of this, kind of ties into that. And then if you want, bringing a diversity and inclusion council to your organization. So there's ways of bringing people together, picking those diverse people from the organization's diversity, including positions and race and ethnicity, religion, education, abilities, all of that, gender, sexual orientation, putting all of those into it, bringing these people together, coming up with groups. And then sometimes there's subgroups. Sometimes people want an LGBT support group in their building, or a single mom, or programs that help promote minority leadership. You know, there's all sorts of different programs. So bringing someone into your organization to do something like that is a great option. And NCCJ has been involved in doing those with some different organizations. So the next question is, what does your organization do to foster a culture of inclusion? Anyone out there have some creative things that they do? Or if you want to think about it, creative ways that you're including inclusion when you're working remotely? I had a friend of mine tell me that she has arranged at her office for coffee breaks. So they have Zoom coffee breaks where they'll get together for 15 minutes and not talk about work and just kind of chat, because you know, we have so many Zoom meetings nowadays that are very focused. It's nice to have that opportunity to mingle. Anyone else have other thoughts on things? Let's see, a weekly social call for 30 to 45 minutes, and we try to avoid talking about work. Yep. Yeah, checking in, like all those natural conversations that would happen when you walk by someone in the office, they're not happening right now. So it's good that you're taking the time to do that. Anyone else have some ideas? If you do, put them in the chat box. I haven't attended it yet, but I've been invited. Oh, let's see. We also did a coworker share. Share the pet you're working with from home. That's a good one. My networking group is good at supporting each other's personal issues as well as business needs. You're right. It's important to support those issues. And even now, when we're not seeing people, it's important to kind of check in and make sure everyone's doing okay. Another way for inclusion, I was invited recently to a group of people that get together and do meditation once a week. You know, so bringing people together to do that. We are a new project called Miami Valley Meals. My goal, once we get settled in our space, is to bring a different speaker of different topics monthly for our team. So that's a great idea too. Bring in people, learn about different organizations. We do all the points except volunteer hours. We have tables, conversations with international students and host families, give them opportunities to experience Dayton pre-COVID. We did the pet share as well with Zoom. I like that idea. Sally said we just hired 2 new employees and it was announced through email to the staff. We replied individually to welcome them to the Turner family. That's very nice. So there's lots of different things we can do to help people feel included. Our non-for-profit board calls supporters and clients to see if there's anything we can do now. That's a great idea too, checking in on your supporters and other people. Yeah, because this could be a very isolating time for a lot of people. That's great to do.
All right.
All right.
Thank you everyone for sharing ideas. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, now I'm going to pass it back to Lake.
Oh, well, there you go. So we're going to go into some tips for creating an inclusive environment. Sherry, do you like the picture? That's Sherry's daughter in the middle.
That's my baby.
Camps.
I love it.
So we're going to go over some tips for creating an inclusive environment in your workplace. And I think a lot of these can also be taken out of the workplace into your own personal life. So the first item, educate yourself on different identities and cultures. This is really important, getting that education. As Adrienne mentioned, there was a supervisor that she had who was educated enough about holidays to be able to acknowledge the holiday that she was celebrating that may be out of our quote unquote mainstream in the media. So educating yourself about the things that your employees may be celebrating, that your employees may hold of importance is really important. So these are our windows. Last year at NCCJ, we tried to have as diverse of a holiday themed window display as possible. And these ones you see reference to Hanukkah as well as to Christmas, but in other windows as well. We were talking about Kwanzaa. There were actually educational materials even in our windows that we're educating people on cultures that were different than the ones that they may be familiar with. What do you have on your walls? This is a really important conversation around being intentional about the things that your office is displaying. So these are items that are displayed in our NCCJ office. The middle painting was created by an individual with disabilities. And then we have items as well who are displaying diverse individuals. What we found in a lot of offices is that photos of people traditionally are white individuals, and that our art comes from really a lot of the same places. So by putting things up on your walls that represent diverse individuals, you're sending a clear message that that is something that your workplace values. Show employees that you are a safe person. So these bottom two, or the right one and the bottom one, are from our office. That diverse, inclusive, accepting, welcoming space for everyone poster on the top right is something that we have displayed on our front door, as well as directly in our front entrance to our office, to make it clear from the very beginning that individuals of all backgrounds are welcome in this space. That bottom middle one actually is on my desk. My wife painted it for my desk. But those are clear symbols that you can send to somebody as an individual within a workplace, as well as a workplace as a whole, that you are a safe and inclusive place. The one on the top right is a small 8x10 laminated print. And that small print, and they could even be smaller, sends a very large message to somebody who, for some individuals in oppressed groups, it can be hard to go into a space and not be aware of how you may be treated in that space. The top left is a church here in Dayton that send a very clear message that their faith does not discriminate, that an individual going into this church will be treated with an equal mindset. Work on saying uncomfortable words aloud without whispering, okay? Now I think the without whispering portion of this is really important, that conversations of diversity and inclusion should be in your mainstream. They should be words that are commonplace within your office. So this is a quote here: "I don't speak because I have the power to speak. I speak because I don't have the power to remain silent." It's another quote that's hanging on the outside of our office, being very intentional about the things that we are showing in the conversations that we are having. So let's talk about having some of these difficult conversations. Our first tip: attend your own response. Let me catch up on my notes. So attend your own response. Hold steady, breathe, breathe, breathe. Don't take things personally, and know your own buttons, okay? So to begin with our own response, we want to slow down, right? So we're holding steady, we're breathing, we're thinking about the things that we're saying. We're knowing that the things that someone is saying to us likely is not a personal attack on us, but rather a reflection of that person, okay? And the know your own buttons is kind of, I think, the word that I think of more often is triggers, right? What are the things that I know are going to trigger me? And how am I going to respond to those triggers? Understand the situation, okay? In difficult conversations, it's really crucial to truly understand what's happening. Don't be afraid to ask clarifying questions to an individual. Ask for more details. Restate what you heard them say to make sure that you actually heard what they were trying to communicate. I know personally, when I'm in the heat of the moment, I can say things that don't quite line up with the reality. What they perceive doesn't quite line up with the reality of what I was trying to communicate to them. So by restating what you heard, you're able to make sure that, okay, we're on the same page before we move forward with this conversation. Deliver a short-term response. So in difficult conversations, we are going to do everything we can to avoid a negative comment towards that individual, right? This is not a me versus you conversation. And we're going to deliver a short-term response. So we have some great examples. The first one: that's not okay with me, right? What you said is hurtful. That's not funny. Hold on, I need to process what you just said, right? So again, this is that I'm slowing down. I'm being intentional about how I respond. So I need to take a breather for a second. Maybe I need to slow down because I'm overcome with emotion, or maybe I just need to quickly process what you said and interpret the best way for me to respond to this. As I mentioned, what you just said is harmful. So thinking about these statements, at the beginning of this presentation, I mentioned that intent does not always equal impact, okay? And these statements are ways that I think we can respond in that moment. If I say something that I think is quite funny and you find it hurtful, acknowledging the fact that what you just said is harmful to me is really important in, first of all, the healing between the two individuals, but also it's really important in communicating to that person that that's not okay, so that they can turn that harmful comment into a learning moment, okay? We are all products of our upbringing. Maybe I didn't realize that was a problem, what I just said, but now I do, and now I have a responsibility to correct that action. Rita said, when you have a moment, please share the author of the quote on your window. Yes, we can definitely share the author of the quote. I think it's a rabbi, but if somebody is able to look at that and send it out in the, perfect. Janet Jackson, thank you very much. And consider your long-term options. So meet privately to have further conversation. And I think the meeting privately portion of this is crucial. These difficult conversations, to start out with, the environment may not be in the middle of an office. It may not be in front of a crowd. Maybe to begin, we need to sit down and have a private conversation. However, we may also consider bringing someone in for follow-up conversation. So this may be a trainer or some sort of facilitator, or maybe in the term of a private conversation, maybe we need to bring some sort of mediator in to help us have that conversation in an effective way, right? Because as we mentioned at the beginning of this, we don't want these conversations to turn into a me versus you. We want it to turn into something that is truly productive for change.
Hey, Lake, I just want to add really quickly something.
Yep.
So before COVID, I had gotten a call from an organization saying, we'd like you to meet with a supervisor. There's been some concerns about comments that this person has made. So the person came in. What I agreed to do was just a one-on-one with this individual. They came in, and when we talked about the situation, we realized that she was looking through things with one lens. And when we talked about how other people could be interpreting things, it helped that individual to understand why she was getting reactions for the things that she was doing. And some of it had to do with not showing who they really were, so having that one-on-one conversation was able to help that person see things in a completely different way and open up. And actually, that person reached out to me a few weeks ago and said, things have greatly improved. They're very happy with the way things are going at work, and was really appreciative for it. I think when they first got to me, they were like, I'm kind of felt bad about it. But as we kind of talked and processed everything, it turns out to be really positive. And I think that's it. A lot of people really want to work and get along well with their coworkers. And this person was in leadership and was able to really see things in a different way. So having that one-on-one discussion, sometimes bringing that other person in to do it, can really have a big impact on an organization. Thanks, Lake.
Great, thank you. So we're going to talk briefly about the action continuum. This is one of my favorite things to think about as we're talking about diversity and inclusion, okay? So going over the action continuum, we're going to briefly talk about each of these bottom boxes, okay? But keeping in mind that the things on the further left are actively supporting oppressive behavior, and the things on the far right are actively confronting oppression, okay? So we're going to begin with actively participating. So if an individual is falling in the actively participating category of the action continuum, they are doing things that actively support oppression, okay? So these are behaviors, actions, speech that is oppressive. So this could be vocalizing stereotypes. This could be discriminating in your organization, such as hiring individuals based upon their name or their skin color. Those are behaviors that fall in the actively participating category. We move to the right to the denying, ignoring category. Denying, ignoring means that you deny that a problem even exists, with oppression, and you ignore that there's a problem. We move further right to recognizing no action. And recognizing no action means that I recognize that there's oppression existing maybe in our workplace, in our society, but I've made a decision, a cognizant decision, to not take any action on that oppression to try to end it. The next category is recognizing action. So this is the first that probably falls less in the oppressive category. In this category, we recognize that oppressive behaviors are existing, and we're taking action to end those behaviors. So for example, if there's a hiring practice in my business that is perhaps racist, it's biased against people with certain names, or it's biased against people of a certain nationality, I recognize that that problem exists, and I'm taking some sort of action into maybe putting together a plan on how we can fix that problem. The next category is educating self, and congratulations to everyone in this training, because today you fall in the educating self category. You are doing an active thing to learn more about the issues relating to diversity and inclusion and oppressive behaviors. The next category is educating others. That's what myself and Adrian are doing today. These are active things that we can do to teach others around the issues of diversity, inclusion, and oppression. Now, educating others does not need to look like what we're doing today, okay? It doesn't need to be an hour and a half. It doesn't need to be curriculum or PowerPoint driven. Educating others can be talking about diverse religions, talking about diverse mindsets and views, and just teaching others, whether that be in a large capacity, a small capacity. That could be recommending to your employees, hey, here's a movie that I've watched that I think we should probably watch. We've talked in our workplace about hosting, maybe viewing party is the wrong word, but everyone watching a movie over the week. And on Fridays, we would come together and talk about that movie, talk about that documentary or film and how we viewed it, right? So that could be an educating others opportunity. The next category is supporting, encouraging. So in this category, you are supporting efforts that end oppression and supporting those individuals who have been oppressed, and encouraging behaviors that end oppression. And the furthest right category is initiating, preventing. So the initiating, preventing category, this is an individual who is actively taking steps to not only end oppression as it's happening, but take preventative measures to make sure that it does not happen in the future. So this could be starting, in my role, it would be starting some sort of camp or some sort of school program that would educate students proactively on the issues related to diversity and inclusion, right? In a workplace, initiating, preventing could be putting together a campaign to show individuals that your workplace is inclusive and taking actions to make sure that it is going to be inclusive. So a few noteworthy things with the action continuum, okay? The place that you are today does not mean that you are always in that place, right? Myself, as a diversity and inclusion perspective, I try to be as far to the right as possible, but there's certainly times that I slip, right? We make mistakes, we move a little bit to the left, we start supporting oppression a little bit more. But we want to challenge ourselves and our organizations to fall as far to the right in confronting oppression as possible, okay? The other noteworthy thing is that you may fall in different points on this action continuum on different issues, okay? So perhaps on the issue of racism, I'm really killing it. I'm confronting oppression. I'm doing a great job, right? But maybe on some sort of other issue relating to diversity and inclusion, I could be struggling a little bit more. In fact, I could even be actively participating in that oppression while I'm initiating and preventing other forms of oppression, okay? All right, challenge yourself. And this is where we're gonna have a little bit of a conversation. As I mentioned earlier, this is that slide 38, where we're gonna talk a little bit about statements and social media. So when we were looking at this challenge yourself slide, actually yesterday in the last week, we were talking about being bold. So we've tried to reframe it a little bit more to be more intentional about being bold. The first point of this is attend a diversity and inclusion event. And we're going to send out an email and follow up to this training today with a series of diversity and inclusion trainings that NCCJ is hosting in the coming months. But being intentional about sending yourself and the people at your place of employment to diversity and inclusion events. Read, watch, and listen. If you are on social media, you've probably seen the read, watch, and listen things come across your page. I know that I am being flooded with things that I should watch, I should read, I should listen to. And we just want to highlight a few right now, okay? The first, for read, I think in a conversation right now, we cannot not mention the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. So we want to definitely encourage the reading of that book. White Fragility and Me and White Supremacy are two other great books around these issues that are important to read. For watch, there's a lot of great options. We want to especially highlight 13th and Just Mercy. And a new feature on Netflix, if you are a Netflix watcher, there is actually a Netflix feature that shows you lists of movies that you should watch relating to the Black Lives Matter movement, which is really awesome. Listen, and this is a shameless plug for listening. We love podcasts, and we love them so much that we actually have a Dayton diversity podcast that NCCJ hosts called Gem City Diversity. So definitely we encourage listening to Gem City Diversity. Other great podcasts, though, because it's not just about NCCJs. There's a podcast called What Matters. It's actually a podcast that's hosted by the Black Lives Matter movement. So that's a great podcast, as well as Code Switch by NPR that talks about specifically racism, but also other diversity and inclusion issues. Okay, that's read, watch, and listen. Here's really the meat of it. Do more than post on social media. Now, this is important for ourselves, but it's also important for our organizations. So let's start with ourselves, okay? Me as an individual, posting on social media is a platform that I have, that I can use, but by posting some sort of graphic on social media that says I'm an ally, that action alone does not make me an ally. We have to have behaviors that back that post up, okay? The same thing applies to our organizations, right? So NCCJ released a statement after the killing of George Floyd, and I'm assuming that probably a lot of your organizations did as well. We've seen them everywhere. Even when I go to shop at Amazon, which I do quite frequently, something shows up about how Amazon is supporting racial equity, right? So we are flooded with these statements. If you have not read Ben and Jerry's statement, I highly encourage you to read it because it is bold, right? We're talking about bold. That is a bold statement. And I think that's where a lot of our organizations should strive to be, right? But there is a difference in posting a statement in solidarity and putting a period mark at the end, and that being the end of the conversation, and actually posting a statement that leads to action, right? So NCCJ actually released two statements. The first was kind of our immediate statement, and the second one talked more about our actions that we're going to be taking. So in our second statement, we were very intentional at ending our second statement with 8 specific action items that NCCJ is going to do. In fact, some of them we have already started. And we even provided dates for when those action items will begin. So for example, our first point was host town halls around racial equity to learn about the community's feelings and to actually present our findings to the city. We've actually already done 2 of those town halls, and next week we have our third, okay? So we wanna make sure that everything that we are saying regarding diversity and inclusion is not, I think as somebody put in the comments earlier, just about the advertising, that it's actually about making a difference in our organizations. We can send out the link to our statement that NCCJ posted and the action items that are at the bottom of that. But I highly encourage individuals to think about those statements and think about what's the reason that we're doing it. We want that reason to be because we want to inspire action. Encourage your organization to support grassroots organizations addressing systematic racism within your community, highlighting some of those groups. Review your organization's hiring and recruitment policies. This is something that we've talked about extensively throughout the training today. Be intentional about where you are recruiting your interns from, and be intentional about including HBCUs in that recruiting process. HBCUs, which we happen to have 2 of here in our community. We are very intentional about Central State, especially trying to get our interns from. It's easy for our organizations in Dayton to reach out to the University of Dayton, and it's easy for our organizations to reach out to Wright State. But there's a lot of other groups who have more diverse individuals who we want to reach out to. And if you've not reached out to Central State, even for example, they even pay their interns, their college, to come into workplaces. So we want to make sure we're intentional about where we're getting our interns from and who we're hiring. And visit the Underground Railroad Freedom Center in Cincinnati. Now, this is a specific, a good follow-up question from Carolyn. HBCU is a historically Black college or university. So we have Central State and Wilberforce here that are HBCUs, for example. Visit the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center in Cincinnati. This is an example, but this is not the only example. There's a lot of places in our area that highlight diversity and inclusion. I even think of the Peace Museum in Dayton, right, as being a place that talks about these different things. So be intentional about the places you as an individual are visiting. And even if you have the opportunity, think about places that your employers or that your company and organization can visit as a company, or perhaps places that you can partner with to do some sort of project, right? Because we want to have diverse individuals, diverse organizations that we're partnering. So remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint, right? Diversity and inclusion is a long-term project. It takes a while. This is not going to be something that in a month or two is going to be over. The fight is not over quite like that, right? We want to keep working. A famous line in the diversity and inclusion employment area is, a lot of my colleagues say, I wish that by the time I retire, I'll be out of a job, right? That diversity and inclusion becomes so mainstream that we won't need people like me. But today it's still important. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. It's not going to happen overnight. So with that, I turn it back to Adrienne.
Okay, so when we're talking about marathons, thank you, Lake, we need to put self-care into that. And it's kind of, I was just looking at the time thinking, you know, that's what happens with self-care, right? We have 4 minutes left and now we're going to do a little bit of self-care. It's always one of the last things that seems to fit into my schedule is taking care of myself. But right now, with everything going on, when our whole world has been turned upside down, self-care is more important now than ever. I would also like to highlight, this is my cat. That is Mino, which actually means kitten in French. I think he looks super relaxed, checking out the birds at the bird feeder, laying back in his hammock. I don't know, it just cracks me up. So, but cats can relax, they do it all the time, and we need to learn from them, I guess. So self-care, can anyone share in the comments something that they do to take care of themselves? Any quick things that people can post? Yoga, that's a great one. You know, when in the beginning, when we were working from home, I felt like things kind of slowed down for a little bit, and I was able to find time to do yoga in the morning, took long walks at night. Anyone else have some self-care tips? Brisk walks every evening, yep. Getting out and enjoying the weather. Keep Sunday nights free to regroup and for the week. That's a great idea, taking that time to slow down. Drawing is a great one too. Let's see, Julie said that we did a whole podcast on self-care for caregivers, and I think it's the hardest thing is not feeling guilty for needing your time. That is absolutely true. Taking care of us is important. So this is my $30,000 worth of wisdom that I got from grad school. I feel it's the most important thing I learned as a social worker, that if I don't take care of myself, I cannot take care of others. And that's super true no matter what is going on, no matter what field you're in. Eating wisely, taking care of what we eat and watching our diet and not nibbling all day because the fridge is right next to us. Exercise and healthy meals. Julie Lake asked if you can post the podcast name and we can share that with everyone. Meditation, jigsaw puzzles, and Sudoku. Old nerd in the gym. So going to the gym. Oh, is that the name of the podcast? Old Nerd in the Gym? Yes. Oh, thanks, Julie. All right, so the podcast is Old Nerd in the Gym. It's a podcast for caregivers. Look at self-care like the oxygen mask on an airplane. Yes, I've heard this analogy. Thanks, Sally. You need to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. Absolutely true. We need to do that. We need to do it now more than ever, because as we're talking about social media, I find I go on it and I'm reading all these heavy articles after heavy article after heavy article. So something that maybe used to be a little bit mindless to me is really turning into growth and learning that I love. And I'm very passionate about it, so I keep doing it. But sometimes I use my cell phone typically. I need to put my phone down. I need to walk away from it, you know. And the same thing with the movies on Netflix. You know, I saw a lot of positive comments about Just Mercy. That was really powerful. There were great messages in there, things that I hadn't learned. And another 13th, the other one that Lake mentioned. I mean, there's so many things in there that I was unaware of growing up. So let's see, watching TV when my toddler tells me I can, that's true. I guess if you have kids, you gotta ask the boss what you're allowed to do. But watching TV, finding a funny series, something not so serious, and swimming is another one. These are all great ideas for self-care. Please make sure to find time to do them. And I know in the very beginning, we talked about conversations, breathe. Make sure to breathe. Sometimes we don't have a lot of time, so take a few moments just to take some deep breaths. Maybe close your eyes for a minute, breathe, fill up your lungs with fresh air, put out some positive intentions for the day. But, you know, doing some of that, that's something really quick and easy that we can do even when we're sitting in our desk or whatever we're using now for an office. So if we have time, I'd love it if people would talk a little bit about something they are going to do after this, something that you're looking at bringing back to your organization, that you're going to do for yourself as a result of coming to today. Your one commitment. What's your one thing? So if people can share that in comments. I know for me, I have started some books. Each of the books that Lake mentioned, actually, I have started them all. I'm going to finish them. So that's something I'm going to do. And if you're not aware of it, that Me and White Supremacy is actually, I think it's a 28-day journal. So every day you read a few pages and then there's a journal writing that goes along with it. So if anyone's willing to share something that they're going to do, visit the National Underground Freedom Railroad Center. It is a great place to go. They have some phenomenal exhibits and things that change. Continue to educate myself through the resources that we talked about. Since I work in PR, this has given me great talking points with clients, what they are planning to share. What they are planning to share this information is step one. Yep. Thank you, Julie. Make a plan for recruiting. We plan to hire our first staff next week. Great. I'm glad you're going to look at that, Carolyn. I have an auto email from my calendar at 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. with a prayer. I am working through the 28-day journal and adding my responses to the next day auto email, so I'm reminded of my thoughts. All right. So taking that time for self-care. All right, so with all of this, I wanted to say that I greatly appreciated everybody talking and sharing their points. There's so many great things that people are doing and communicating and working together. I hope that you can take things from this that you can use. I know it was nice that you were able to point out some of those things. And we want to say thank you again to Sherry and the Better Business Bureau for having us. We were very excited to be a part of this, and for everyone that spoke up, and Lake for everything that you did, and Anthony in the background. So we appreciate it. Here is our contact information. When we send an email out, we'll give our individual information. So what we'll do is we'll send information to Sherry, and then Sherry can send to participants. Am I correct in that? Okay, thank you, Sherry. Yep. And we'll send the slides to Sherry so that she can send them out to everybody. So we'll send those to her within the next few minutes, and she'll get them out. And then we'll also send a list of resources that we talked about. And there was one more thing, Lake. What was the third thing we said we were going to send? Oh, the link to our statement that we released. So we'll get all those three things together and send them to Sherry. But thank you everybody for being on here, for taking the time to start today's Tuesday, right? Tuesday morning with us. We hope you all have a great day and a great week. And if you need anything, reach out to us.
Thanks to the three of you, and I will be forwarding that email later this morning, so be on the lookout for you. Again, thank you for joining us this morning. If you have an opportunity to learn more about NCCJ, it is a great organization. I know my daughter participated at Anytown, which was a life-changing opportunity for her. So they do some great things, so check them out. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye, thanks.
Like, one question is will the slides include the read, watch, listen recommendations?
I can add that to the slide. Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
We could also just send another resource with that. I think we
That'd
have
be
a list
perfect.
of that information, so we'll make sure to send that out.
Okay.
Is that the end of everybody? Is it just all of us?
We still have Jackie on. You guys did a great job, so thank you very much. I think there was great information shared, and there was lots of interaction, which was great too.
Yeah.
So I was happy to see that.
Me
So,
too.
yeah.
I had a
that
lot of
was
private
awesome.
conversations with people that were really good.
Did you too?
Oh, were there?
Mhm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, when people would comment, I would try to privately message them afterwards.
That's great.
Awesome. No, so thank you. I'll look for your email and forward it on. But I appreciate all you do.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you as well. So I was curious as I was announcing it, do you guys have a list of minority businesses, or do you have anything like that as well?
You know what? We have not had that. We are currently working on developing that, and that's just happened within the last year. We have not been breaking down our accredited businesses that way, but now we're looking at women-owned, veteran-owned, minority-owned, and really breaking it up more demographically so that we can provide that information as well.
Okay. When I made the comment about the chamber, I'm like, oh man, I don't know if you guys have it or not.
No,
So,
we don't.
okay.
No, that was a weakness that we are working on within the last year. So absolutely. But the chamber is a great resource. We partner with them on a lot of things. So
Right. I figured you would. But I wanted just to make sure that I
Absolutely.
didn't miss out on something.
nope,
So.
you're good. You're good.
All right.
But
Well,
thank
good.
you. I'm going to stop
Thank you.
recording.